Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Utah Stories podcast. My name is Rich Markosian. Thanks for joining me. So, why are COVID cases surging now in Utah? Could it have anything to do with a massive Halloween party in Utah County? We look into that. Joe Biden is our next president? Well, probably. And Utah manufacturer creates COVID-safe igloos for restaurants, as well as Utah votes to abolish slavery. We look into that in more depth. All those stories and more on today's program. Before we get to that, I want to tell you about Canyon Meadows grass-fed beef. If you have not tried Canyon Meadows beef yet, man, you got to give it a shot. It is seriously amazing beef raised here right in Utah on a family farm, in spending their entire lives out in pastures and green fields. The cows are healthy, they're happy. They're actually practicing regenerative agriculture, and if you don't know what that is, go look it up. It's amazing. They're actually sequestering carbon. They're producing more fertile soil over the years. I did a documentary film on Canyon Meadows a few years back, and I absolutely love what they're doing. I sold factory farm beef when I was a kid. This is exactly the opposite. It's sustainable. It's good for the environment. It's healthy. Go give them a shot. They're giving a special offer for Utah Stories podcast listeners. Go use offer code Utah Stories. They'll give you a discount, and you will love it. Guarantee it. Go check out our Instagram page. You'll see the recent steaks and rib briskets that I smoked. It's amazing. Everybody in my family loves it. Okay, so our crazy times just got crazier over the weekend. Your phone was probably buzzing that Utah declared a state of emergency because our COVID cases are surging. It's now to the point where it's unsustainable for our hospitals all along the Wasatch Front, really, to be able to take as many patients as are coming in now. It's very bad, and everybody needs to wear masks statewide. They've mandated it. We're told we should not be meeting in groups of more than 10 people. As much as I don't like these sort of draconian policies, which they know they can't enforce, they got to do something to say we've really got to button things up. State epidemiologist Angela Dunn said that there's a huge number of new cases that are coming from young people who, it seems, aren't wearing masks. We'll get into this with this humongous Halloween party that happened that didn't get a whole lot of coverage, but if you don't know about it, we're going to show you footage from that party, and that's all coming right up. So I just wanted to chime in a little bit about the presidential race. So Joe Biden is our next president. It looks like that's about 98% sure. But there was a possibility of massive voter fraud in Pennsylvania. The way I looked at it, I look at both sides, and what bothers me is that the mainstream media is calling that fake news, that there's the possibility of widespread voter fraud, that people got paid off to basically put in a whole bunch of ballots for Joe Biden. It's happened before, folks. This is not something new. Widespread voter fraud has happened, and it needs to be looked into. If it's not examined, if it's not looked into and investigated, there's no question it's going to happen rampantly again. And if it did happen, we should be able to know about it. And that the stations like NPR are just saying there's absolutely no chance that there was widespread voter fraud. They don't know that. And that they'd be reporting like that there's just absolutely no chance that happened. How do they know that? They don't know that. So my point is, likely Joe Biden's our next president. That's fine. But we should definitely be looking into the allegations, and I think all the lawsuits should be moving forward. Because there's statistical anomalies, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, when those final counties were coming in Pennsylvania, 100% of some of those counties were Biden. 100% of all the ballots that they were counting were Biden. That doesn't happen. Statistically speaking, that's a huge statistical anomaly that needs to be looked into. And then there was 90% voter turnout in some of those counties. That doesn't happen either. Statistically speaking, there's never 90% turnout. We're lucky to have like 70% turnout at the very highest. So those statistical anomalies need to be looked at, and those are true. Those happened. So enough of that. This isn't a national show. This is a local show. Let's get to presenting and showing to you the story behind the stories in a lot of local headlines. So we did this last week for the first time. It's highlighting the most important local news stories and kind of presenting to you the story behind the story. We had one of our stories went viral last week. It was the story on Yak's Cafe, where they were banning their patrons from wearing masks. They said, if you want to come into our restaurant, you can come, but you cannot wear a mask, just defying the state order. That was an interesting story. We just wrote about it. That story went viral. But we got a lot of cool stories. And one of our stories before I'm presenting it to you today, the one about the Halloween party, has already gone viral. So, I mean, it's not like we are regurgitating the mainstream news. We want to find the story behind the story and look at these important stories in greater depth. We think that's a better use of your time than just like looking at a gazillion stories, examining them an inch deep and a mile wide. It's better you know more about what's going on. So let's take a look at how Utah County's rebellious saints face the COVID surge, or might actually be causing the COVID surge in Utah. They threw a massive Halloween party demonstrating their nonconformity by not wearing masks, not allowing the liberal propaganda to infiltrate their rebel streak and mass gathering. Just like the protesters who were meeting weekly in downtown Salt Lake, every week there was a new protest. They were dancing, they were rebelling, they were chanting, no justice, no peace. They are now suffering the consequences of a massive COVID surge, especially in Utah County. COVID does not understand that neither saints nor social justice warriors are immune. COVID does not seem to show concern over the cause that brings people together. The toll keeps rising, mainly due to unsanctioned mass gatherings and people not being careful. So neither the LDS Church nor Governor Gary Herbert ever encouraged LDS members to attend mass gatherings. Still, between 3,000 and 10,000 people came to Utah Lake to party like it's 1999, reports Fox 13 News. This mass gathering was shut down by police, who are now likely pressing charges against the group called Utah Tonight and Tribe Utah. Both groups deleted all of their Instagram and Facebook posts. You can see some of that footage. It was a raucous party, and you can tell that these are very young kids who went to this party.
Officials say up to 10,000 people packed this spot for a Halloween party in protest of COVID regulations.
And you can tell, I had a bit of a debate with my assistant producer here, whether these are saints or not. Grow up in Utah, you can tell who's Mormon and who's not Mormon. It's really pretty easy once you see enough people and meet them. These are mostly Mormon kids. But the Salt Lake Tribune reported its record numbers of cases, 2,807 on Friday. Today there's another 2,500 cases. 2 people died. 7 of them died. We're getting up to a 20% positive diagnosis rate, so now 20% of all the people going in to be tested are proving to be positive. So it's clear that while COVID has little impact on those who get it, who are young, their immune systems are strong enough to be able to easily defeat the virus. They often just get flu-like symptoms. My nephew got it, didn't really faze him. But the patients over 65 or over the age of 85 who have comorbidities, it is proving to be quite fatal and very, very dangerous. So we've been really critical of the news coverage and the lack of reporting of the factual data regarding what happens when people get COVID, especially young people, how so few young people actually die. News outlets such as CNN and MSNBC and many left-leaning newspapers seem to think the public cannot handle the truth, and they'd be doing basically a disservice to report the fact that less than 1%, 1 in 100 of infected patients over the age of 65 die from COVID. So you have 1 in 100 chance of getting it if you're over the age of 65. If you're under the age of 55, you have less than 1. You have 1 in a 1,000 chance of getting it. If you're healthy and you're under the age of 45, you're almost, it's almost just like getting a bad flu. So they don't report on this in the Tribune, and I've disparaged the Tribune because they never mention that. They never mention these statistics because they think it's dangerous. They think it's the population as a whole that we're just going to go crazy. All the young people are going to go nuts if they get the truth. This party, this Halloween party, I think it's having absolutely the opposite effect. Younger people distrust the media to a greater extent now than they ever have because their parents are pointing out the distrust. They're not reporting facts. They're omitting the facts. And so these kids likely have parents saying, oh, yeah, this COVID thing, it's so blown out of proportion. And then they go and party, and now we're seeing a giant surge in COVID. It's clear that it's backfiring. The whole idea that they're not reporting the factual data about how the healthy people who've gotten it got over it really quickly, it's backfiring on them. And so now we absolutely need to practice social distancing. We need to wear a mask. We need to stay home now more than ever, way more than we did it back in March. And so now that we're in this situation, more elderly people will needlessly die if we don't follow the state mandate. So it's a tough situation we're in, but now we have to live with it, and it's unfortunate. So on to our next story. Did you see the weird ballot measure that we were going to vote to abolish slavery in Utah? There was language in our state constitution that was allowing slavery. This is 157 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed by Abraham Lincoln that we're finally doing it. We're finally moving forward. And 80% of people who voted, yes, let's abolish slavery in Utah. Wow. So what's this all about? I mean, I really didn't understand it, and it was actually really hard to find any news stories about it. I had to do some real digging. But last year, Colorado passed the same measure in their state, removing all the language from their constitution, abolishing slavery. And what the language was is it actually says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except as a punishment for crime, whether the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States. So you could actually become a slave as a punishment for a crime. So it turns out the American Civil Liberties Union was behind this amendment. The sponsor in Utah was named Jason Groth. He put it this way, talking to the Tribune: it would be a way to start reconciling how our criminal justice practices have been used in the past by acknowledging that they have the way they've continued to this day. So I was just trying to figure out but why? If there's no slavery going on in Utah, why are we going about this way? So it turns out that as late as the 1930s, Alabama had lots of revenue. No, as late as the 1898, a lot of the revenue coming into Alabama to pay for their prisons came from slavery, and they were actually earning a profit, basically just leasing out their prisoners for money. And 70% of Alabama's revenue came from this practice in 1898. That's according to the ACLU. There's a PBS documentary on this topic. You can go to Utah Stories. We got links to all this. Then after the Civil War, the South's economy, society, and government were in shambles. The Southern state government struggled to raise money to repair damaged infrastructure. They basically needed to do this. They needed to lease out prisoner labor to pay for all of the damages done by the Civil War. But it did not come to a head. It didn't actually end until 1923. They were continuing to lease out prisoner labor until 1923, and this was when a 22-year-old white man who was being leased out in Tallahassee, Florida, was convicted for hopping on a train and arrested for vagrancy. He was actually starved, and he was barely able to week. He was working 15-hour days in hip-deep water, shoveling swamps and mud. He had scabs and cuts all over his shoulders and knees. They had documentary proof of this. He died. His parents were informed. And so this guy's name was Tabert. And based on this white guy dying, Alabama outlawed leasing of county prisoners in 1923. So some states, though, they just moved convicts into prisons and they assigned them under work details under the leadership of the prison. That way they wouldn't get supposedly as mistreated as badly. So they ended that convict lease program in Georgia. So the question is now, is prison labor essentially slave labor? If we have prisoners in prisons, work, is that slave labor? And this has been an ongoing debate. There was an interesting story from 2015 by The Atlantic. According to this Atlantic story, prison labor and convict leasing programs are still widely used in Louisiana. There was a documentary filmed about a prison program that allowed inmates to work on a farm called Angola. According to the same Atlantic story, over the decades, prison labor has expanded in scope and reach. Incarcerated workers laboring within in-house operations or through convict leasing partnerships with for-profit businesses have been involved in mining, agriculture, and all manner of manufacturing, from making military weapons, sewing garments for Victoria's Secret. I tried to find and back up that they're really sewing garments for Victoria's Secret. I could not find that article. I don't know that that's true. But basically, they were using incarcerated workers to lease them out to pay for their prison time. So is this widespread? Is this like going on all over the place today? Like, is it happening in Utah? I don't know. We had on a guest on our podcast. Her name was Darlene McDonald. I told her I would look into this. We were, talking about it back and forth. She said slaves are currently being used today by corporations to make products that show up in stores like Walmart. I told her I would research this. I spent 2 hours. I found finally one really good article that examines both sides of the argument. Prison work programs reduce recidivism. That's kind of been a study they've done. When prisoners are kept busy and they're working and they're doing something, not only are they keeping busy, they're learning skills that they can apply to the workforce. I'm really interested in this topic, but unfortunately I have so much time I can spend. If it's something you're interested in, leave a comment below. Thumbs up this, share it with a friend. I would like to dig into it more, but I need to see that there's interest behind this story. We could go to the state prisons through Utah. We could have one of our investigative journalists go out and find out what's going on with prison labor. Just let us know if you're interested in the story, and we'll follow it if that's the case. Okay, so the final story we've got for you is a really awesome story about a exhibition company. They do trade shows and exhibits. They were faced with having to lay off all their employees. They didn't have any work. There's no big trade shows going on right now. They decided to try to make COVID-friendly outdoor igloos for restaurants that have patios, because we're moving into the winter season. People are going to have to go indoors or probably not go to restaurants at all until we have the vaccine done. So they came up with this igloo, and check out this photo for you on YouTube. If you don't, check out to our website. It's this beautiful curved wood structure with plexiglass, with doors that open, and it's really beautiful. It's called Alpine Globes. They tested out these Alpine Globes at a Cafe Galleria in Midway, and they found it, and they were an astounding hit. The cafe says they're now booked out for reservations until February. Reservations are $20, which goes towards the cost of your food. If you dine there and spend more than $100, they're super awesome. But if you want to buy one, if you're a restaurant owner, you got a great patio, you stay busy, they're $12,000 a pop. So obviously it would be quite expensive, but if you're trying to get over this hump and you want to keep your staff busy, maybe you can justify the cost. Okay, so with that, I want to tell you about our last sponsor, which is Utah Green Bikes. If you want to go green, as we said in a previous episode, buying an electric car might not be the way to go because of the mining practices that they use to get the lithium, the nickel, the zinc. But there's no doubt if you want to go green, there's no better way to do it than going with Green Bikes. Green Bikes is a local nonprofit bike share that connects employment and residential centers to transit stops and popular entertainment destinations. Green Bike seeks to improve community health, air quality, and increase the use of existing transit infrastructure. Green Bike is a local nonprofit private partnership between Salt Lake City, Utah Transit Authority, Select Health, and other private sponsors. To date, Green Bikers have removed 5.8 million vehicle miles from local roads, prevented more than 5 million pounds of CO2 from entering our air, all while burning 76 million calories in the process. That's 267,000 slices of pizza. To learn more about Green Bike and find out how you can take as many rides as you want for a year for less than 20 cents a day, follow Green Bike on social media at SLC Bike Share or visit greenbikeslc.org. Okay, we have another story I'm not going to have time to get to. It's about more parents opting out of public education. Visit utahstories.com to read that one. Just wanted to share with you some of the incredible photos I took over this last fall on the trail. My last trail run with my dogs was right before this big snowstorm hit. It was just totally spectacular on the trail. We had a blast. I just want to show you a few of the photos that we've picked up off our Instagram account. And you can follow us on Instagram at utahstories.com. So we're going to try out this headline podcast for the next few weeks. If you like it, please help us out by giving us a thumbs up, giving us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with a couple of friends. That would help out a great deal. And then also, we've got an episode from our archives we're pulling out that we didn't publish yet because I haven't written the story, but we're going to publish it online. It's Joel Janetsky. I sat down and interviewed him. He's a professor at BYU in paleontology, and he has a new book coming out all about the indigenous people of Utah. He's an expert on the Fremont Indians. He and I had a great conversation about the Fremont Indians how they were essentially replaced by the Ute Indians. We also talked about the diet of indigenous people, like how they were foraging their food, they were hunting wild game, and they were likely healthier than a lot of us are today, and how sedentary populations often struggle to stay healthy compared to hunter and gatherer populations. I found the conversation super fascinating. If you're into, indigenous people, into paleontology and the study of culture, technology, and evolution, and where we come from, I just really enjoyed talking to Joel. I think you're going to like it. All right. So besides that, this is our issue that is almost out everywhere. We're going to restock the associated food stores with it that are in Murray, that are in Cottonwood Heights, and in Holiday. So if you didn't get it, we'll restock it. It'll be out one more week until our new November/December issue is coming. We were hoping to go month to month again starting in November. Because of the COVID surge, a couple of restaurants were shut down. We just decided we're going to have to combine months again. Kind of a bummer, but it is a fantastic issue we're about to come out with. If you want to subscribe to the magazine and have this delivered right to your home, which is the best way to get it, go to utahstories.com. You pay $30. It's delivered right to your door. That is less. That is like $2.50 a month. It's the best way to get it. And we put it in a plastic sealed bag, delivered right to your door, and it helps us out because it's a little bit difficult to get the magazines out, and it's a safe way, so you don't even have to go anywhere to get it. All right, thank you so much for watching. Our producer is Connie Lewis. Our technical producer is Tyler Bond. Our digital publisher is Golda Hukic Markosian. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.